Okay, let's get started. Hey, everybody, and welcome back for round 2 of the day for Offset. My name is Ryan Selvy. If this is your first time here, I am a motion designer and graphic designer here on Behance, and I have the privilege of being able to come over and take over Adobe Live for the next 4 days and bring on some really cool artists, talk to them about what inspires them, what gets their creative juices flowing, and kind of just take a peek behind the curtain as to see the process, inspiration, and everything else that goes into creating art. This is a live stream, although you can also check the replay on YouTube and Behance. If you're on YouTube, most of the conversation's happening over on Behance, so make sure you go ahead and hop on over there. Today, we're going to be having Rikky Fernandes, which is a very exciting guest for me. I actually met him through a common friend of mine, and he does fantastic still photography and has a wonderful understanding of business and photography, which I think is very helpful for a lot of people here on Behance. I know there's a lot of photographers. So as we're going through comment and conversation, please feel free to ask questions, and I will relay them to him. And if you have any comments or you just want to have the open discourse, it is a live stream after all, and we want to hear from you. Right off the bat, hi to Wade, Annika, Gareth, and Andika, Oliver as well, and Clever. Thank you guys for being here. It's really good to have you. But I don't want to waste too much time just on me. So without further ado, I would love to go ahead and bring in Rikky. If I could find the proper thing to press. Where'd it go? I lost you. There you are. There you are. Hi, hello, welcome.
Oh, hey, how are you? I was a little worried.
Too many windows open.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just coming off fresh of episode 1 with Kara Sykes, which was really fun. But now I'm really excited to sit down and talk with you. So just for everybody else who maybe has never heard of you before, do you want to just give a quick elevator pitch as to what you're about and who you are as an artist and a person?
Sure. Yeah. I am Rikky Fernandes. I'm a still life mostly product photographer based in New York City. I'm originally from Texas. I know your last person, Kara, from the show right before this was also from Texas, but I'm from a small town in Texas. I went to school in Utah and have a BFA in photography. And then in early 2016, decided to move to New York City to pursue my career in photography, where quickly I learned that, New York's an expensive place. I have to make money. And so I quickly shifted into post-production retouching and spent several years as a freelance retoucher and also in a post-production house, working on a lot of big brands like Banana Republic or Victoria's Secret, MAC Cosmetics. And I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes, I guess, on a day-to-day basis of how, Photoshop structures and how photographers work and how they work on a commercial level. And that eventually inspired me to pursue what I originally came to New York City to do and to shoot. And started doing that, honestly, right about at the beginning of the pandemic. And I have been doing that full time ever since for about the last 2 to 3 years. So that's what I do.
Perfect. And I mean, I think that's also a great testament as to what we're going to be kind of doing today with you talking about being able to see how things work. And going right off your website is kind of just going also off of what you just said. But you say you're still a life photographer based in New York City, growing up queer and Latino in small town Texas, brought about a sense of curiosity and exploration that is often reflected in his images. He thrives on magic of experimentation to drive his workflow, embracing the unexpected. Rikky is an advocate for creating safe, artistic environments that are conducive for inclusivity and belonging for other underrepresented artists, which that's a great mission statement. you said that you came to the city with photography in mind, and you kind of landed on retouching as a means to pay the bills. But when you went to school for photography, what was the trajectory of the reason why you were going to school for photography?
Well, so I actually went to school, really wanted to do graphic design.
Mhm.
And the program to get into the graphic design program was quite competitive. They only allowed you to apply twice before they make you do something else. And
Until they
yeah,
kick you to the curb.
yeah, basically. And so what happened was I applied once, got rejected, applied twice, got rejected, and photography was actually my backup, which I was honestly a little bit unenthused to pursue because,
Because that's not
I
what you
feel
were
like,
going for originally. Yeah.
no, yeah, exactly. And I kind of feel like, in today's day and age, everyone's a photographer. Everyone has an iPhone in their pocket, So it's like, how am I really going to set myself apart when everyone has access to, a camera nowadays, I guess. So, but I quickly learned that it was actually for me. And the original goal was to be a fashion photographer. I remember growing up, like my website says queer and Latinx and like a small town kind of in the sticks, I guess. I'd watch Project Runway and I'd watch America's Next Top Model, and I was like, I want to go to New York City. I want to work in fashion.
All these
I
people seem
want,
so nice,
yeah,
and
exactly.
kind.
So I always have had this like thing of I wanted to be, in a more glamorous setting than I grew up in. And so I felt and quickly learned that photography could sort of put me into that position. And so that was the original goal, was to shoot people. But I guess maybe I can talk about later how I am shifted to not shooting people, and I shoot primarily products now.
Now, obviously, that's something that is viable for business, and you obviously, as we will see in just a moment, have extreme talent for it and make some really great pieces. I am wondering now, is that kind of shifted your interest as well? Is it something that kind of like it was making money and then slowly you're like, wait a second, I actually really love this? Or is this something that one day you would ever see yourself going back to fashion photography?
I think not specifically fashion photography. Wouldn't go back to. I would go more into shooting beauty in the sense of like faces
Mhm.
and things like that. Sorry, what was your question exactly?
No, that was
How?
pretty much that. That answered it. You're good.
Okay, yeah. No,
um,
I think one day, in a couple of years, I'm trying to slowly shift a little bit into going into hands and going into parts like lips and eyes and things like that. And I think that can eventually get me into shooting faces again.
Fantastic. So I
Yeah.
think for giving everyone else reference as to what we're talking about, it would be a great time to go into our very first segment, which is let's look at your work. Let's look at your work. So we have your website up already, which is just heyricky.com, which is available for anyone who has an internet connection. And there's some really beautiful stuff. Just right as you hit the front page, you notice that there is bright saturated colors, great close-ups, just both playing with the idea of using the frame to your advantage and you really dictating where the viewer is going to look. But it has a very wide range of different things that you have included. Now, what is the range of time for most of these? Are these like within the last year, within the last 2 years?
Yeah, I would say everything on here has been shot, I guess, the beginning of the pandemic till now. So I guess that's now 3 years,
Wow.
which is crazy. But yeah, yeah, past 3 years. It's all a kind of a big mix right now that I'm going back and forth.
And it's just that your body of work for just 3 years is absolutely amazing. The idea of just like so many different products and so many different shots, and they're all very strong. So it's great to see. I
Thanks.
think it's funny you have one with hair here. Out of this
Yes.
one that you have, what would you say that you're kind of drawn to? What's your current favorite?
Well, I feel like honestly, it's my favorites are beginning to end. So I basically have ordered it according to what I'm most proud of.
Uh-huh.
So this stuff, which Ulla Henriksen, which I didn't learn until about a year ago that it's actually pronounced Ulla instead of Ole or Ol Henriksen, which
Yeah.
it's it's a brand that's in Sephora, and some maybe some of you guys have seen that brand, but they have a very I guess colorful, funky, playful approach, and I feel like right now their direction is a good example of kind of how I feel like my work should be displayed, which I feel like so much of still life photographers in New York City are very technical, and they're almost technical first approach. And I feel like sometimes that lacks a sense of humor or sense of playfulness or color or just anything that's a little bit odd and weird. And I like to be able to push that weird lens, that colorful lens, that oversaturated lens.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like looking at this one, it just with that in mind of the idea of like something that is gross and like the idea of kind of down here or over
Yeah.
here. When I first landed on the page, gross was never a word that came to mind. But hearing you say that, I'm like kind of reevaluating the shots that I'm looking at, and I'm like saying like, oh, okay, like yeah, you could see that this is maybe something that if you were to route it internally, they would maybe, push back on it. But in the end, the final product really benefits from the idea of using these unconventional textures or this kind of gloop from the top pouring over,
Yep.
which is a cool approach to see.
Yeah. I this one not so much, but I kind of feel like there's a sense of me wanting to make things slightly uncomfortable, but still keep it beautiful. And because there's just billions of images on Instagram and on the internet, and when you have that slightly uncomfortable thing, I feel like it allows people to stop for half a second longer than the average image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you're shooting and you're kind of building these up, are you shooting them in your apartment? Do you kind of go to a studio, or are you normally on location? What does your process look like?
So when I was still retouching, freelancing at the beginning of 2020, I was shooting in my apartment, and I would just go to Sephora or open my medicine cabinet and pick up something to start to build my portfolio up. And then very quickly, the pandemic, I think, kind of spurred this sense of the world's burning. I guess I need to change my life.
Yeah.
I quickly decided to commit to a very small studio space. And it's like literally 10 feet by 10 feet. It's very inexpensive, but it allowed me to set up a proper space. And I shot a lot of the earlier work. If you go like lower down on the page, a lot of that stuff was in that small 10 by 10 space. And because I wasn't working as much, I was able to pump out a lot of portfolio work and really build up this.
Now,
Yeah.
with lighting and like structure, and is that all things that you was trial and error, and you kind of just got to a point where you discovered a style that kind of could work for a lot of different products, or did you look up specific like people that have used lighting and like photography or kind of retouching skills from like YouTube?
No, so a lot of it for the shooting aspect, I was taught how to use strobes in school and use a studio space in school, but it wasn't really taught so much about how to shoot or light still life or product. And so a lot of that was just trial and error, which kind of goes back to my mission statement on my website is I love to experiment. And so a lot of this was just kind of playing with like the light, and is it coming from the side, from the top, and using different kinds of materials like plexiglass to diffuse things, and just kind of seeing what worked the best. And so there was definitely like a good 6 months where I had no idea what I was actually doing. But it was kind of like a good crash course to figure it all out.
Paloma says lurking and oohing and eyeing over everything.
Thanks.
So to that point, I know you're talking about, you said looking through plexiglass for a piece of kind of like rebouncing light or diffusing it. Was there anything in particular that you found that was notably surprising of something that you use all the time now?
Yeah, so there's this it's literally a I don't know even what it's called. It's like a frosted plexiglass, like 1 foot by 1 foot. And what I did was I ended up getting two of them, and I'd always kind of like try to balance them to kind of diffuse. What it does, it kind of makes a gradient from like very light to very dark. And so you would basically open it up like a book, like a V, basically like this. And so I ended up, making my own little, like I got it like this plastic hinge, and basically, I don't know, it's really hard to describe, but basically put two of these, 1 foot by 1 foot plexiglasses together so that I can create this particular, in I don't know how to explain this. This
Like
particular
dome, like a
gradient.
protector kind of.
Wait, say that again.
Like dome or like protector kind of like to prevent light from like going through a certain spot.
Yeah, kind of. It's just basically like two pieces of diffusion, and on this end, on the end where they touch, it's a bright point of the gradient, and when they open up, it fades out. So I guess I almost have to show you in studio to really describe it properly. But my point is, it was really an item that I self-made. It cost like less than $10.
Mhm.
And I still use it to this day. I made it 3 years ago, and I pull it out. I call it my diffusion book.
And it
But
doesn't add any color of any sorts. The gradient is just kind of a gradient of like dark to light or light to dark.
yeah, yeah. Actually, if you scroll down a bit, to that right side, that Chanel, those two floating guys, if you go up a little bit, a little higher, those to the right, yeah, that. So you see how there's like a gradient on the top right side of that left product, and it
Mhm.
fades out into black. That was used using this little gradient plexi book that I have. But I guess my point here is it's not something that I purchased from like a photo store or anything. It's something that I found through experimentation that works, and I
Mhm.
made it myself, and no one else has one. And so, really unconventional objects that you make yourself are often like the best tools to light stuff, so that no one
Yeah,
else
love to
kind
hear
of
it.
has those things. Yeah.
Kara from previous episode actually is in the chat saying, "Love when people make specific tools that work with their style." And yeah, I think that's exactly what we were looking for. Bruce wants to know if you have to buy materials when taking on certain products. For example, the palm leaf mango shot. Does it ever become difficult finding assets?
Sorry. So, what do you mean, like for propping, or what do
Yeah,
you
for
mean?
propping, like when you had to go and like you got this palm, like what did you ever find it difficult to find the things that you kind of want to collect for pieces,
So,
or do you kind of
so
hoard them
for
all?
this particular thing, I always nowadays work with a stylist,
Mhm.
unless it's personal work, and I just do it by myself. But I fortunately had the opportunity to work with this fabulous stylist named Adrian Krabs. He's a set designer, and he found all of these amazing props. Um, I'm sure he had some trouble finding all of these things, but I remember him coming to set with, I mean, thousands of dollars worth of options, basically. And this Glossier Balm campaign was a series of 10 images, and they're all different. There's 3 of them on my website, but we probably used like a fifth of what we had available to us on set that day. And so um, I can't really speak to difficulty, but I'm sure it was a challenging task for all these prop stylists to bring all these options.
Yeah, and it's such a interesting and delicate balance of something being too busy and taking away from the product,
Yeah.
and accenting the thing and building mood. Like obviously, this one has this red clip, which obviously could be a little too loud, but since you have the pink and the purple also kind of
Hmm.
around the piece, it balances it enough that it doesn't overtake it all.
Yeah, I mean, this Glossier campaign was actually really interesting. It was the idea of kind of creating like a live mood board of each flavor of balm that they have, and trying to kind of create the world that the person using the balm would identify with. And so, like, this is like the person that has like the daily planner, or I don't really know like where all the plastic pieces necessarily come in, but I think it's just more for like the aesthetic.
Mhm.
But if you go back to like the mango one with the palm leaf on there, it's like the girl, like the margarita girl, who loves the beach, and things like that. So
I feel seen. It's good. We're fine.
yeah, exactly, right. That's definitely me. I'm the margarita girl with the tahini and mango and spicy, you know, spicy rim.
By the way, over on YouTube, Ursula is chiming in with all caps saying, "Big fan of Ricky. No one else lights like Ricky."
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so we love your fan base.
Yeah, for no for no one else that knows, Ursula and I work together a lot. She is my digital tech on set, so she works with me frequently, and she will always say, "No one lights like Ricky," and I appreciate that compliment.
I do have a question about some of these floating ones that you have. Do you have a rig set up where they're like on poles and dowels that you then later Photoshop out?
Yeah, if you don't mind, do you mind if I share my screen?
Yeah, of course.
I actually anticipated this. Let me see. Sorry.
I want to eat this. I know I'm not supposed to, but it looks like mint chocolate chip ice cream, and I just want to just take a spoonful.
I mean, it is called Cookies and Clean, so there's a
Oh, is it really? That's so cute and
yes,
annoying.
I think that's the point, right? So I actually did not have the opportunity to retouch this particular campaign, but I do have the original image, and then I received the retouch assets, and so I'll just toggle. This was the before,
Oh, weird.
right? Yeah, and so these are what it's called armature wire. You can just find it on Amazon or anywhere, and it's basically a modeling wire that sculptors use to create, wireframes for their sculptures and stuff. But prop stylists will use them a lot, and they'll hot glue the backs of things, and they can easily bend and twist things. And so this was placed exactly the way you see in the final asset, like this. And in the retouching, we obviously, take the wires out, clean it up, add contrast, add saturation, do all those things. But I think it's really interesting. A lot of people will comment and say, "Oh, I thought you shot these all separately and comped them together in Photoshop," and it was basically shot as is,
Yeah.
which I always find interesting.
Now, do you also shoot the background as itself without anything, kind of like in the way that you would shoot something that you're going to green screen without any of the models? Or is that just the shot that you go off of and then you go in and you add the light flares in the background to add depth?
So the light flares were added, but typically the way I would set this up is we set it all up as like the final image, like you see here, and we would take one product out one at a time, and those are called photo plates. And that way, if a retoucher needs to move a particular object, or if a logo is covered, they can shift the whole product up a little bit or around in Photoshop afterwards. And then the final step would be shooting the background completely clean by itself. And the way the file is structured is they would make each item separate. Um, so yeah, I guess I was
No,
maybe
that's exactly what I was looking for.
okay. Yeah.
Now, as you toggle between these two, also, I'm noticing that for some parts, the contrast in the shadows is being really like heightened. That even almost in a way kind of brings darkness to some of the labeling that's on the product itself. What's the meaning behind adding more shadows and light when you're kind of approaching a product like this?
So I'm just assuming because I didn't retouch this, but if
Oh, you
I
didn't
were
retouch this one.
no,
Sorry.
no, this was I understand how it works and stuff, but this particular image I didn't. But for me, I do feel like this section where I'm kind of hovering, you can see my mouse, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that's a little too dark. I personally would have lightened that a bit, but it does. I think it's nice because it adds like a sense of um direction and dynamic light, and I'm not completely against that. I feel like up here that is a bit dark. I would have lightened that personally. Um, so it's really a lot, really personal preference and subjective. But yeah, I don't know.
It's also interesting because as we were flipping between the two, I also noticed that within the uh, container itself, you can see that they actually increased the size of the whip.
Yeah.
Like it
Yep.
gets bigger, and they
Yep.
also obviously like white balanced it out. Um,
Hmm.
but
Like,
it just I would never think to fill out it like closer to the rim, you know?
yeah, and they do it here as well. You can see this edge is really not clean. A lot of those things are taken into account when
Now,
you do select retouching.
I remember growing up and like finding out that a lot of times like ice cream was actually mashed potatoes or like syrup was actually like, motor oil or whatever. Is there anything that you've learned while being kind of in this product world that surprises you?
No, no, not really surprised. There are some tricks of the trade, I guess. Like most of the time, water is not actually water; it's glycerin, and that creates like a level of beading in the water that's nice. I guess when it comes to retouching, I think maybe 20 years ago there was a sense of mashed potatoes or other weird tricks, but I feel like nowadays people have kind of caught on to those trends and brands are being called out when they are not authentic and real.
Right.
Especially when it comes to retouching skin. I know a lot of beauty brands, they go to the no retouching,
Yeah.
and
The no filter filters.
the no filter filters, yeah, and I think that's an approach to trying to be more honest in their stuff. So something that did surprise me when I started getting into retouching in 2016 was, I won't say the brand's name, but a lot of these brands for like underwear models and things like that, they are not allowed to manipulate sizes. Whereas I feel like 20 years ago they were manipulating, waists and hips and things like that. Um, but nowadays, I feel like a brand would be canceled if they, made someone skinnier or brought in thighs or did something like that. And so I think that was kind of something surprising to me to see that nowadays for most brands they are really conscious of not, being, I guess, problematic, and doing those things. So
And building
yeah,
like a false reality.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Um, Now, to that point, Annika has a really good question in the chat. She's wondering how you find the balance in retouching when creating something like this, and making it feel realistic, even when it's going through like a part of an edit. Do you normally kind of like apply a filter to the top after you dot everything so everything feels uniform? Are there any tricks that you do to just make it everything not stick out whenever it's edited?
I feel like that's a hard question, because I feel
So
like
I
it
can
comes
let me
down.
like so like when
Yeah, help
I
me.
do
Yeah,
illustrations sometimes and
yeah.
I'm dealing with colors or something, I'll put everything in and then I'll put like an adjustment layer right on top and I'll adjust with curves that maybe just add a
Oh,
little bit
got
of
it.
red or a little bit of blue. That way everything, even though like I am confident kind of in my colors,
Yeah,
like that just will do enough to bring it all together. So then when you look between the two, it feels more cohesive.
yeah.
I was just wondering if there's anything that you do, like even if it's like a levels or
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
saturation that bring everything together.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I can show you later when I open a lot of my retouching files and show you kind of like my structure and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I do have like an overall layer, or overall folder on top with, that affects everything underneath it. And then I do isolated local adjustments, basically, like if the shadows are too dark, I'll brighten the shadows. But yeah, there are some layers that you do put on top, like overall contrast, overall saturation, to kind of keep that cohesive feeling. And I can discuss that more later.
Fantastic. All
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, I guess we are about 30 minutes in, so we can hop to a new segment. One thing that we really like to touch on is the idea of influence and the idea that art doesn't happen in a vacuum. Want to kind of look into what inspires you and what brings you joy from looking at other people's works. So let's check out some art talk. So you told me that you are a fan of Raymond Meier. How
It's,
did you
yeah,
find his
Raymond
work?
Meier. Yeah.
Meyer. Okay.
Yeah.
I will butcher thousands of names. I will tell you that all
It's
the
totally
time.
fine. Um, so Raymond Meier, he's one of, I've worked with Glossier quite a bit. I've had a relationship with them for the past couple of years. But their, I guess, main flagship photographer, I don't know what to call it. His name is Raymond Meier. He's a Swiss photographer who came into prominence, I don't know, in the 80s, 90s, I guess, like quite a while ago. And he started in fashion photography, and has shifted into still life product photography.
Wow,
Um,
is he copying you?
no, is he copying me?
Yeah.
Exactly, right? No, am I copying that career trajectory? I don't know, maybe. But no, maybe I'll do it in the reverse order and do still life and then go into fashion one day. But he has worked for a lot of great brands. He, I think, is currently, if you've ever walked down Fifth Avenue in the past 6 months in New York City, and seen these massive Tiffany billboards, he has shot the Tiffany's advertisements, the jewelry. And I just think he is really good at establishing a look and feeling for a brand. He does things really consistently, like this flash photography look here, and also has a sense of playfulness, which inspires me. There's messiness, and like you had said earlier, it's not per se ugly, but there is a messiness there that's embraced, and it's interesting, and but it's also still beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, I can definitely draw some comparisons. I mean, I think that both have their unique looks. Like, I think that I can see inspiration from him, but at the same time,
Mhm.
I can like certainly tell a difference.
Yeah,
I think that what's kind of cool here is he really is okay with kind of creating the product look similar to how you would see it maybe in your medicine cabinet or your
yeah,
drawer where it's actually kept, more so than kind of just the spot where it's this beautiful thing that you buy on the shelf and um Rite Aid or whatever.
yeah.
Not to say that they're all sold in Rite Aid. I just couldn't think of anything.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's an interesting choice, but it adds so much like flavor and personality to the idea of this
yeah.
product shop.
I actually think Raymond too. One of my goals in my I guess philosophy for shooting is to create things, to make them larger than life, to personify them in a sense, to kind of give them a personality and a lifelike, feature, I guess. Which is, I feel like a lot of my images, they are shot from below, very heroic, looking upwards towards the product. And I think he does a very similar thing too. It's just giving each product a personality, something inanimate, life.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is kind of often forgotten when you're approaching, not you, like just the idea
Hmm.
you of like approaching still life, is the idea that it is something that's inanimate. But like having to add character and personality is the thing that takes it to the next level. And actually, they want us to relate to an idea of a product in a way, and you can't do that when it's just something that's completely static. Um, so when did he kind of come onto your radar?
So my partner actually worked for Glossier, and started working for Glossier in 2017, and I was introduced to, I guess, the deep world of the back end of Glossier back then, and that's actually when he came onto my radar when I was introduced, kind of just through my partner's work, and working with Raymond
Oh,
directly.
and just stuck. I really
Yeah,
like this one with the ants, and I like the lighting too with the shadows. It I noticed I don't think you have too many shadows in a lot of your shots. Would it ever be something that you would want to kind of explore with the idea of like more dramatic lighting?
I should. I do find that there was a big trend towards hard shadows, starting, I guess, 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe even earlier than that. And I don't want to. I'm really sensitive to being too trendy, I guess.
Yeah,
I had a mentor when I was in school tell me it's always important to have a sense of timelessness in your work. And while my stuff is kind of poppy and kind of saturated and playful, I still think they're timeless in a sense. Like, I feel like I could see this 5, 6 years from now potentially, and it wouldn't feel like, oh, that's a photo from 2016, or that's
right.
a photo from.
Which is tough because a lot of times you can really nail down like when it was shot in like the 90s or
Yeah,
like mid
yeah.
2000s. Although sometimes like now you look at stuff and you're like, oh, that was shot in the 90s. You're like, actually, that was shot yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is, like, that's the great thing about trends though, is they do come back into fashion,
Right.
especially like 90s stuff. Seeing a lot of that now. But no, I need to lean in a little bit more into shadows, I think.
But then also speaking from the idea of like you don't shoot everything that you retouch, right? Like sometimes you just get stuff and then you just are retouching someone else's shots, right?
Not anymore. I mean,
No more.
starting in 2020, I only retouch my own work.
Mhm.
But yeah, before then, no, I was retouching just a wide variety of work.
Now, do you feel like there's something lost in the idea that you're not working with another person? Like, do you feel like sometimes that is beneficial to the work, or is it best to see it all the way through from shot to editing?
Well, so nowadays too, so to clarify, I would say about 80% of my work that I shoot, I don't retouch. And that will be
Oh,
often
so you
taken.
flipped it. You went
I flipped
all the
it,
way
yes.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's just, there's just so much you can't do it all yourself.
absolutely.
So most of the time, a company or a brand will keep the images. I just basically deliver a hard drive, and they have full, you know, it's completely up to them to do whatever they want. And sometimes letting go of that is a little challenging,
Absolutely.
because you don't have a complete say so how your work will look down the road.
Yeah.
But that's just part of the process. That's how things work. But I am really grateful for some of the images and projects that I'm able to see from beginning to end. And I do actually, I feel like those are the images I'm most proud of because I touched every single part of it.
Right.
So yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Well, to that point, I would love to kind of take a peek behind the curtain and see
yeah.
kind of what goes on. So I think we could go into our next segment. What's in your sketchbook?
Ooh, what's in your sketchbook?
So the idea of sketchbook is very fluid. It doesn't have to necessarily be like a full sketchbook kind of vibe. But I know that you did go ahead when we were talking a little bit about what we wanted to do for the series.
Hmm.
You had mentioned that there might be some stuff that you can look with some mood boards when you're working with a small team for a video test.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pull that up for us right down here as well. And I think this is also a really good transition to also kind of talk about how a lot of your talent also comes from working with teams and working in the business. And so anything that you can provide as a
Yeah.
advice or tips that come along the way, please feel free to interject them and let them know. Also, if you guys in the chat have any questions for Rikky as we're talking, please by all means just throw them in there, and I will relay them as well. But starting off with this motion test that we have, I'm actually going to see if I can pull it up here in a way there that you guys don't have to look at my screen. You can actually just see the slides itself. We'll see if Google lets me do it. But what was this project with House Labs, and what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I did a personal test with. I chose to shoot House Labs. I was not hired for the job, but I was working. I started to dip my toe more into directing video, and I had access to this robotics rigging person, and I had never worked with robotics, and so this was an opportunity for me to kind of test out that water a little bit.
All right, high
um
level, how do you feel now that we've stepped away from
oh
it? Do you like robotics now, or are you
yeah,
like never
honestly,
again?
it really it really elevates things to a sense of like the final product has people asking, oh, how did they do that, which I think is really important in photography and video, is having that element of, wait a second, like how was that done, and that kind of separates you and elevates you.
Yeah.
um it's wild to me, like the amount of technology that's available, I guess nowadays, in terms of like robotics.
Yes.
um
I see some
it's
crazy stuff now with people like, I mean, the obvious one is when people are like literally in these rigs that are like moving the entire set
Yeah.
and taking shots. But I'm also seeing these crazy ones now with product shots with robotic agencies that, like, I just always assumed that it had been 3D or something with like a Kit Kat commercial, but in reality it's
Right,
actually
right.
like a physical Kit Kat that they
Do
are
you
like,
know the guy? His name is Steve Geralt.
oh, this sounds
He
familiar.
Yeah, he's pretty like kind of Instagram famous, I guess.
Yes, these things exactly.
Yeah, and he does he does a level of robotics that I've not actually been able to touch yet. Just because it becomes so expensive to have
So
the
expensive.
so expensive. He has like a massive, like, the garage is what it's called,
Mhm.
and he has this massive space. And I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that I can only
Oh, I
dream
saw
of
the behind the
having.
scenes of that cheesy bread, actually.
Yeah, it's nuts. So like I guess the goal years down the road is to like be able to do some video stuff like this.
Yeah.
So this test I did was kind of a very soft version of this kind of level of stuff. This guy that I work with, his name is Max Thomas, by the way. He kind of works on a smaller scale and does more where you would like rig a bottle to something and the camera and the bottle move simultaneously. It's not so much like big splashes or I don't even know what Steve Geralt is even capable of, but
that's what I also want to know. I want to are they engineers that got into photography, or are they like videographers that got into engineering? Like, which came
I think
first?
they're engineers that got into photography, and honestly, I am not smart enough to figure any of that stuff out. So I think a lot of these are proprietary, self-made robotics that he rents out to people in New York City, or I have no idea, to be honest. But that's my impression, is that he has engineered a lot of this himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, go check out Steve's work. Really fascinating stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a quick rabbit hole that you can easily lose a lot of time in on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we have this collection though, this look and feel, and so you presented this, you built this out prior to like kind of hopping into anything, right?
Yeah. So I mean, to be honest with you, I don't draw things out. I'm really bad. Like when I was in college, I never took notes ever. I would take a history class and like I would start taking notes, and then like my ears would like shut off kind of thing. So I kind of created this habit of like observing and listening and seeing the world and just having a good memory about it. And that has translated into my professional work of, I don't like to prep too much. I like to just kind of go on a whim, which I know is
it's some chaos.
It's very chaotic. You can ask people I work with. It can be chaotic, but at the end of the day, the job gets done. It's done successfully. I just feel like I work the best when I rely on my intuition rather than over planning, I guess. But I think that's a personal choice, and that definitely doesn't work for a lot of people. So I guess this is the closest it comes to me having a sketchbook in a sense, and that is prepping for a shoot with mood boards. And so
that,
basically,
that is definitely like a point of the segment too. Is like, it's called What's in Your Sketchbook, but it's not surprising. I guess it's like more comforting than anything else. The more artists that I talk to, the more that I realize that it's not like an A to B, like straight line. Like everyone finds their process and the way that they do preparation differently. And obviously a mood board like this it's always really good. I actually was talking to Ursula a few weeks ago. I had never seen a Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I was up late working on something, and I just like turned it on, and I thought it was going to be completely one thing because I'd seen like pictures like this. And I've been like, oh yeah, obviously it's all about like, open the pod bay doors, how I was like, it's going to be a whole thing of like almost like a Die Hard kind of just man versus machine the whole time. I was like an hour into it, I'm like, what is this movie about?
Then, I have to be honest, I've never seen Space Odyssey, even though
watch it. It is beautiful, but it is like it's not what you expect it to be. It's not what you expect it to be at all.
Two references here from it. So I know that it exists, and I have seen some images from it, but that's like on my list to watch, to be honest. So
no, watch it. I think it's on HBO. Especially if you like these shots too, because so much of it is like painstakingly like it is a spaceship and another spaceship, and they take, no lie, like 3 minutes just to move the spaceship across. So they make you sit and stay with the compositions for a really long time.
That sounds awful and also awesome.
It's awful and awesome. It's like a merge of the two. So I would definitely recommend it, but I would also just curb your expectations.
Okay, that sounds good.
But with that, it feels very futuristic. What are the collections of these? You have some colors, you have some products. Can you tell us more about that?
So the mood board for this is definitely like look and feel. It's not very specific in the sense of like there's obviously models. There's even some on the bottom right hand side, some weird images of Lady Gaga because she's the founder of House Labs. And so that's not necessarily saying that, oh, we're going to have people in this shoot. That's just to have a color palette, to have angles and kind of the distortion that's happening in here. That's just references for that stuff. And so the way I put this together, honestly, a lot of it's just like spending about 8 hours of my day pulling images and just being like, oh yeah, like I need to go look here and I need to go look there, and just kind of scouring the internet for things that just are in my head that I have remembered. I'm sure there are more efficient, productive ways that people do that, with Pinterest or something else that they collect stuff as they go. But I kind of just remember a lot of stuff.
And you're mostly like a digital kind of call and retrieve kind of person. Like you said, you didn't use Pinterest or something, but you're mostly going to be using the internet to find it. You don't have like a physical collection of any sort, right?
Correct. Yeah. At the moment, I mean, yeah.
Although you do have a bunch of stuff behind you. But is that mostly just decoration?
It's really just kind of decor. It's like art books that are pretty, I don't know. They're not really reference books. I haven't cracked open a lot of these books in a while. Like you can see back there, like The Majesty, the Queen. I do have a weird fascination with, I guess, the late Queen of England. The Crown on Netflix, So I do have some collections back there. I'm looking Van Gogh, Martha Stewart's housekeeping book, just some.
But all of these are all things that just are fully digital process of trying to
exactly
and build out an idea.
Yeah.
And so then you also have something here when you have all the different products kind of just laid out. So this is kind of like a shot list almost.
Yeah, so this is actually when I'm doing a personal test, I have to purchase all these things on my own. So these are basically it's my shopping list, and I lay these out digitally just to make sure that the colors will go together well, or the products will go well together. So that's what this is about, because there's definitely more options available, and I had to kind of pare down what I wanted to purchase.
Right.
That's
I'm
what
gonna
that
go ahead and
is.
switch over just because the way that I have it set up in this moment is not giving me motion, but we do have these guys. And so this is the current branding, just kind of is that you want to fit it in the same realm, or you kind of want to not hit the same realm?
So when I am working with a brand and hired by a brand, I do want to fit in the same realm typically. But when I'm doing a personal test, this was kind of my take on what I think House Labs should be. Way back when, I don't know if you remember when Lady Gaga was doing she was doing music videos directed by Stephen Klein, and things were really gritty and film-like. And I kind of missed that sense of the old version of her. So I was just trying to compare what's currently happening and kind of to show how mine will differentiate. I guess, if that makes any sense. I'm not trying to have a critique on the current House Labs direction, but it's just kind of my way of, if I had full creative reins, I would have not done what their current branding is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So then next up we have this shot list that you have, and then also has these kind of motion pieces. For these, do you kind of go into shoot them for reference first, or is it more of like you have a collection of different ones that you have on file?
No, so I will put up like a little in my living room or in my studio space. This was in my bedroom on the left side. I just had like this little LED light panel, and I get my iPhone out with the products that I'm going to shoot, and I kind of create movements instead of sketching something out. And this way, when I work with the director of photography or the robotics guy, I can send these movements as reference. And so, these are all just iPhone little GIFs that I've created on the left with the lighting kind of reference on the right side.
And then later these would then be developed into something that is of the same motion, but
correct,
with the proper lighting and the right equipment.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Do you shoot a lot of anything on your phone, like even in your own time of personal products? Obviously, I feel like you probably wouldn't take a shot of a product shot with your phone, but I just know that line is being blurred. Do you have like the lenses that you put on your camera or anything?
No, not really. No. I even go on vacation and I don't take photos. Like if I am not in a studio creating work, I don't shoot. And that I think maybe you talked about on your previous segment with Kara. I think that actually ultimately comes down to like burnout and stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely like put the camera down when I'm not working anymore. But almost to a fault. Like I don't do. No.
All right. Well, actually, I made this animation today, so we're gonna do it again. When it comes to burnout, what do you do? Do you go for a walk? Do you normally watch TV? What helps you kind of cure the burnout?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a perpetually anxious person, perpetually burned out all the time.
Yeah, aren't we all?
I know, right? If it was up to me, I would literally just be like a vegetable for the rest of my life. Like I would just be, on the couch potato. But no, I lean deeply into doing nothing. I will lean heavily into playing video games, binge watching Netflix, like just couch potato eating. And it's honestly like awful, but it's super satisfying to just to do nothing.
Right.
And so I really typically like to have at least 2 to 3 days, and I'll take sometimes a long weekend if needed, to just do nothing. I refuse to look at emails, even text messages or anything like that.
Disconnect.
I disconnect very much. I think my life is very high low. Like I pay a lot of attention when I'm working, and I pay not very much attention when I'm not. But along with that, I do like to go to the gym. I do like to take walks. I guess at the end of the day, it is just, I guess, disconnecting from social media, disconnecting from text messages, and always having like someone needing you, I guess.
Yeah.
And so just taking the time to, I guess, provide emotional support for yourself is really important. And luckily, I don't have children. I just have my partner in my house, and there's no one else who needs me emotionally. So
You can check out when you want to.
I can, yeah, and I think that is that's a great privilege that not everyone has. But if you have the opportunity to allow yourself to not have to take care of others, it's really refreshing, and I kind of feel like that's the best way for me to cure my burnout. Yeah.
And to that point, we're about an hour through, so I'm going to give you time to have to yourself, and we're going to do some monkey paws.
Sounds great.
All right, guys, we're going to do some monkey paws. This is just an exercise that was taught to me by Anna Davis Court, the one and only illustrator. She actually live streamed on Behance and Twitch a little bit, so make sure you check her stuff out. But this is just a series of exercises that you can do with your hands to help take care of their fatigue and wear that you're naturally going to have by having on the computer. Now, one thing I will say is if you're using a trackpad or something, I would definitely recommend getting one of these guys. It's like a natural mouse, so you can put in, you move like this rather than this, because this is not a normal way for your wrist to move. And so that's going to help a lot, because I was having issues for a while with feeling pain down my wrists, and these are one of the things that actually help me kind of overcome that and kind of stretch the muscles so that they don't get too messed up. But you can do these every once in a while just to kind of stay nice, loosey-goosey, and then you can get back into, focusing on the artwork itself rather than your aching body. So it's a series of 4 exercises. It goes pretty quick, and what you do is you just say, put your hands out like this, and you bring them in. Ooh, ooh, You have to make the noises, otherwise it doesn't work. And then you release. Then you go down like this for step 2. Bring them in. Ooh, ooh, You might feel like, see, for me, like I feel it like right here whenever I do it. Which, if it hurts too much, please stop. Don't sue me. I'm not a medical professional. But just take it slow. Do it at your own pace. You can raise, you can shake, and then give it away. Give away the monkey paws. Ooh, Thank you for the sound effects, Oliver. I appreciate you. Then release. And then one towards you. And this is the one that always gets me, honestly. Go like this, like that. Although you can see that this is like our 5th time doing offset or something, 4th or 5th time. And if you go back to the very first ones, whenever we did that, because it was like the time when I would only ever do it, I would always make these really ridiculous faces while I was doing it. So thankfully, we've gotten past that. It gets easier the more you do it. Also, whenever I do these offset weeks and we make it through the week, by the time we get to Thursday, I always actually like it doesn't hurt as much to do it as it does on like Monday, like today, which I'm obviously in pain. And then that's like this. See, that's the one. But then you just shake it up, move it around a little bit, move your neck around. If you have to take a walk, go take a walk. Maybe wait, like 30 more minutes until our show's over and then take a walk. But if you have to right now, you can always watch the replays over on YouTube and on Behance. But thank you guys for doing Monkey Paws. And make sure you also check out Anna Davis' work. All right, and welcome back. If you guys are joining in just now, for the last hour or so, we've been interviewing Rikky Fernandes, who is a Brooklyn-based artist, photographer, and retoucher. And we've been going over all of his works from his inspiration and some of his tips and tricks. And I'm going to go ahead and bring him back in.
Thanks.
Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm Queens-based, actually.
You're Queens-based?
Yeah.
What is that? I don't even know where that is.
It's like, yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so he is
No,
New York, far away based artist.
Yeah. No, we're good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out real quick too. I would really love to show we were talking about the house labs testing, and I wanted to show the final product before we moved on, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to pull it up? You want me to pull it up?
I can pull it up.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, I would love to see where all that work ended up and landed. So let's check this out real quick.
And I'll just show you, and then we'll talk about it. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm clicking things I'm not supposed to click. give me a second. Let's start that over.
That's sick. Oh, the light. No one lights like Rikky. That's fantastic. Yeah, I also like the idea of it kind of being shot on top of that LED light, right? So so as it zooms in, it kind of feels like it's going into a void, and you can't tell if the products are floating or if they're standing up on something. Which is cool to see.
So this is actually shot in a studio. I workshopped it with that LED light, and then this was done with like a much larger, like 4x4 foot set.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this was a lot of, like we were talking about before, the robotics of like the twisting and being close up. And one of the most challenging aspects of the shoot was that lip gloss, was being able to twist it. Like the cap was twisting one way, like clockwise, and the base was twisting counterclockwise. And that was actually quite challenging for the robotics to set that up. But
and what is that even based in? Is that like a Raspberry Pi, or is that like how do you, where's the controlling for the robotics?
So you know how I showed you the Fenty stuff earlier with the rigging, right?
Mm-hmm.
With like the armature wire. So basically we had two acrylic posts, I guess, one on top of the cap, like hot glued, and then one on the bottom of the base of the lip gloss, hot glued. And then he had these robotic rotors, I guess, out of like little, motors. I don't know what they're called.
You just go to like Radio Shack to pick that up?
I don't know. I don't know how he did that. He had he has like this whole studio of different knickknacks and robotics things that
Willy
he has.
Wonka of robotics for photography.
Yeah, and it's all like set up to a computer, and he's able to set the speed and all that stuff, and time it perfectly with like the motion of the camera as well. So he was able to like move the camera up and down while these two things were spinning. So that was just like for me, a fascinating example of what you're able to do with still life, to create motion with something that doesn't move,
Yeah. And I think that it's also a testament to the idea that like maybe that is something that you will be able to figure out and explore down the road. of creating your own robotics or messing around with motion in that way in the future. So
yeah, absolutely.
To that point, it is great to look at our past. So let's do our from this to that.
From this to that.
So Rikky was kind enough to send over some old shots of some old work to kind of look at where he was to where he is now. And one of the ones that you shot over was this portrait of this hat. And is this you underneath here?
Yeah, this is me. This is a self-portrait.
And there's nothing of you to be seen.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's black on black, which is obviously a choice, but you have kind of the highlighting of the zipper. I'm assuming this was probably shot in front of like a sick or something.
Yeah.
And probably just like in like some studio space or what have you. But do you want to tell us a little bit about this piece?
Yeah, so it was, this is actually when I was still in school, and this was one of my final projects that I was doing in school. And it was a whole series of self-portraiture. I'm from Texas. I was like, I'm not a cowboy in any sense, but it was just like the nod to me being from the South. I think it was in this moment that I realized I, up until then, had really enjoyed photographing people in fashion. But I was kind of using myself as a prop in a sense, just kind of to tell a story. And I think I started realizing that I liked shooting things rather than people. And I kind of viewed myself, like I said, as more of a prop for the hat and the fashion and things like that. So for me, this was like kind of a pivotal moment to start to realize maybe fashion photography wasn't exactly what I wanted to do in the traditional sense of, working with models or things like that.
Yeah, because I know we also have this one as well, which is similar in that sense.
Yeah, it is.
Where once again you're hidden, although I can tell it's a little bit more of you because of the hair. But the really cool one about this is the texture of the sweater is wild.
Yeah, I love that too. I like to play with textures. I even think the texture of the hair and the texture of the sweater put together is kind of interesting. But yeah, just it's this is definitely something that I would not be doing today.
Okay.
In terms of, I guess, shooting people. But
now, how would you shoot it differently if you were to shoot it today?
I think I would shoot it without anyone underneath it, obviously, and then I think I would again focus a lot on kind of more of like a macro close-up sense, kind of focusing more on the weaving or something like that.
And then would you prop it up with kind of those rigs that we had seen with the makeup, or is it more of like a would you use a mannequin, or would it be more of like?
Yeah, probably. I think I would maybe kind of source some sort of mannequin. I've seen some people do that recently, and I think it's interesting to take something a little bit more inanimate and then try to give it life somehow. But kind of with the same, if I was working with a sweater or soft goods or fashion, it's actually something I haven't explored yet, and I probably need to put that on my list of something to explore.
Now, something would also be really cool to explore would be the idea, if you ever do end up doing mannequins, would also be robotics with mannequins. Like that in itself would be something that would, I don't know, really fuse two worlds together.
I also think that kind of goes a little bit with what I was talking about earlier. It's like slightly uncomfortable, like if you had something moving that wasn't supposed to be moving.
Yeah.
So
that's very Lady Gaga. Like I feel like
absolutely
would just dislocate and then kind of like move away or something. But then obviously you also have that with the product itself. Now you also went ahead and you're kind enough to send over some older work as well. We were looking at some stuff on your website. This is from like 2020, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right, cool.
This is some of the first stuff that I shot, still life.
And so what is this? Like, I don't even know what it is.
Oh, they're like little like serum droppers, like like that you squeeze out.
Oh yeah, because I guess the bubbles within them like tell my brain that they are more curved than they really are, because obviously there's only this one, but then since we have this information, my brain kind of automatically assumed that it continued to curve, but I can see that they're just zoomed up. Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really close up. Shot this in my living room, actually.
And what is
Definitely.
this light? Is this window?
No, that is a strobe. So it's like I used one singular flash,
Okay.
and that's all it was.
So even this is also the flash, like these
It
little like pieces.
yeah, it really like bounces everywhere and refracts, and it's crazy.
And then even also over here, and this area is all was the strobe bouncing off of like a whiteboard or anything, or is it just?
Yeah, so I have basically the only thing was a background piece that I had.
Mhm.
And I actually forget exactly how I lit this, but I think the light was like from the left side of this image and like
Okay.
shooting onto both the product and the background. But yeah, it would bounce, it was bouncing everywhere, bouncing and creating like all these refractions and crazy, bubbles and stuff.
And you're just
The
kind of like
light in the bubbles.
experimenting in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And then also speaking of like lighting, we have this one with these rays coming out. Now, is
hmm
any of this post retouching, or is this all shot as
Uh,
is?
this was kind of shot as is. I shot. The technique here was I used a 100 millimeter lens, which for those who aren't super versed in photography, that's a really close up macro lens. And basically, this is a long exposure. So I would, with a flash. So basically, when I shot, the strobe would activate and shoot, and it would basically capture the image really crisp. But then I would have a 4-second exposure where I slowly unfocused the camera. And as you are unfocusing, it's hard to explain that. It unfocuses and kind of drags and makes these rays of light come out.
Yeah.
So the rays are just a long exposure as I'm defocusing the lens, if that makes any sense.
So no, yeah, basically as is like the idea of when you take a long exposure of like cars passing by,
Yeah,
but in this
exactly.
case, you're using kind of the idea of the zoom of the lens in a way because of the focus is changing the zoom, I guess.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it kind of creates this halo effect. Now, do you still use kind of this technique in any of your newer work, or is this something that is kind of fully in the past?
This is almost fully in the past. Sometimes people will ask me to do it again, and I'll do it for a client. But no, this was kind of just something, an example of my early experimentation, and just kind of creating like something a little odd in that sense of, oh, how did he do that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so when working with clients and in that they're asking for things that you aren't wild about or you've changed on, how do you kind of navigate the client contractor freelancer dynamic? Do you have any tips for people who are trying to get into the same field?
Yeah. Are you talking about like working with doing stuff that I necessarily don't want to do, or is that kind of?
Yeah, I think that's something that you kind of you don't have to drop any names of brands or
No,
anything. I
no,
don't
no, I
want you to get in any troubles.
won't.
But are there any tips or tricks that you do for when you kind of are trying to steer a client closer to something that is your vision rather than something that they're asking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, if you want to be successful in photography, you have to be pretty chill, I guess. A good critique that I get a lot from people is, "Oh, Ricky's so easy to work with," and so I'll talk to other people about this, and I'm like, does that mean they're implying that other people are difficult to work with? Um, but my point in saying that is, I feel like you're paying me money. I can do my own personal projects on my own, but if you're paying me money, I'm gonna execute exactly what you need me to execute, regardless if I'm in love with it or not.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I'm on set, I will give my suggestions and say, hey, I think it would be better like this, or I think it would be better like that. But at the end of the day, if they say no, I kind of just have to do exactly what they want me to do. So be easygoing. Just always realize that you don't have to show everything that you shoot. There's other opportunities for you to display your work that you're proud of. But that's not to say that I'm not proud of my client work. I am very proud of my client work. But I would just say,
No, I mean,
occasionally.
commerce is going to be, and like, capitalism is going to be capitalism,
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
it was just more so of the idea of like dealing with clients in a way that obviously you have a professional thing that you're taking and you're doing something regularly. And so someone comes to you and just offering kind of your expertise to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to hop into a little bit of Photoshop if you don't mind.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I mean, time is flying faster than I anticipated it.
Yeah, you were telling me you were worried we weren't going to fill space. I
I
told you we
was.
could
I was
totally
like,
can
what?
you can talk about plenty for an hour and a half.
Yeah. So let me hold on really quick. Let me get my Photoshop up.
Now, are you a photographer that uses Bridge?
I do.
You do. You're a Bridge user. I'm not a
well,
photographer, so I never hop into Bridge.
And I wouldn't say I am a. Where did my Photoshop go? Sorry. I'm not a. Sorry, I'm struggling here. I'm not a bridge user in the sense of the full capacity of it. Here we go.
But then eventually you ended up landing up in Photoshop. So we're in Photoshop or are we in Lightroom?
We are in Photoshop. I honestly haven't used Lightroom in years. I used to way back when I was shooting like events, or I was even at the time shooting weddings way back when. Yeah, you know, when I'm dealing with 1,000 images, 2,000 images,
right,
like that I would have to deliver. Yeah, I would use Lightroom. I think Lightroom's really good of doing like big bulk delivery. But no, I kind of exclusively work in Photoshop now.
Now, is this all real? Is this like a macro lens and it's just really close on the lips?
These are my lips, by the way.
Your lips?
Yeah, these are my lips.
God. All right, wow.
So you know, they're a little seductive. I think they're a little odd looking. Again, that goes to my like discomfort kind of theme that I've been talking about. But I was in the studio by myself and I just like soaked my lips in glycerin. I really love the glossy reflections. And I will show you, it did not look this nice before. I'll show you the this was the before. And then the after, and I'll just keep toggling a couple of times. So you can see in the before, there's a lot of like glitter pieces, and you know, my lips are not as moisturized or as you think they would be. But
well, I mean, if they were this moisturized when they're at the end, I would be a little concerned. You'd look like I don't know, it's a Pokemon or something.
Yeah, but you know, this too, like, is a good example of how when you don't have the resources, like I didn't have a model that I wanted to either pay for or even reach out to. I was like, I'm just going to photograph my own lips. And I took that opportunity to do a personal project, and it added to it kind of,
Where's that lighting coming from? I know I'm always asking about the lighting, but like that's something that whenever I had to photograph my own work for back in school, I always had like such a temper tantrum whenever it would mess up so much. So I'm always curious to see how these shots are made.
Yeah, so this is just a beauty dish. It's like I think an 18-inch beauty dish, and that's it.
A beauty dish is just like a flat panel.
A beauty dish is a circular. You put it on like the light, and it's just like a circular thing. Like it's almost like a softbox. You know what a softbox is, right?
Yes.
But it's just circular, and it has like people call it a sock. It's like a piece of diffusion on the end of it. And so it's circular items are kind of nice for reflections because you don't see like the corners, you know. And so
by the way, Ursula is in YouTube saying, "Wait, not the glycerin," and then sending to skull emotes.
Yeah, it's always the glycerin.
Is that toxic? Could you get that in your mouth?
No. It's vegetable. It's vegetable glycerin, so it's sourced from plants, and I think you can eat it.
Well, I'm not dead, so there's that.
I mean, don't take advice from me, but I'm assuming you can. I think it's not toxic, but I'm gonna just kind of restart this in a sense.
Okay.
Oh, also, I forgot to take that off. I put a lot of color curves, and I know there was a question about that earlier. But hold on.
Beautiful.
Like this is the geez.
Yeah. So in that end where you get, is that all just like going in with the stamp tool or like content aware and smoothing out, or how are you getting rid of so much detail without it looking like a
Yeah. So my process. Well, let me just kind of. You can't see my file structure, can you?
We actually just lost the whole thing. So.
Oh, sorry. Was that? Maybe that's my computer. Present share screen. Let me get it back up for you. There you go.
Oh, there it is. Cool. Yeah. So no, we can just see the composition of itself.
Okay. So my process really is to start with pixels, and I will. Wait a second. I kind of don't want to mess anything up, so I don't want to show you my. Is there any way for me to show you, I guess, my file structure or anything, like the layers tabs or anything?
Yeah,
Or
if
just
you what are you sharing? What is a window rather than a thing?
Oh, got it.
If you share your screen, I can also hop off real quick of this, so we don't have to see everything, and I can tell you when it's back
Yeah,
in.
let me just share my screen.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Let me get Photoshop.
All right.
Can you see that now?
And yes, now we can.
Okay, so over here you can see my file structure. Let me get this away for a second. And I'm sure this is common knowledge for a lot of people, but just in case it's not, I structure things with the background image that you will never touch. Like this is just in case. And then I have a retouching folder, and for me that means pixels. Like that's pixels I manipulate. And if I wanted to, have like 1,000 layers of different things, I eventually will flatten them all down into one thing. And then on top of that is where I deal with color. And any good retoucher knows that you will never flatten color into your pixels. You always keep CC's color correction. You'll always keep that separate, just in case that you need to change color. And then I always add like a slight sense of grain. I don't know if you guys can see that slight toggle of grain going on and off.
I can see you toggling it, but I don't know if I can see it in the...
Yeah, I think it's a super subtle thing, like if you're printing or something. But, that just kind of adds that, it gets rid of that digital edge.
Okay.
So I always personally just like to do that. But I always start with
What did you just flatten out? You just flatten out the...
Oh, those
you
were
just
just
flattened
layers.
like 10 layers.
Yeah, those were layers I added that had nothing on them. That was
Got
just
it.
me kind of getting rid of that. But just clean folder structure. But I just I always start with like big things with the healing brush, and I just like stamp out things.
And are you just using a mouse?
I'm using a tablet, a Wacom or Wacom tablet.
Oh, very cool.
You want to call it. Yeah. And this will take me sometimes a couple of hours, just whatever I think looks distracting, and that is just
Are
something.
You listening to podcasts? Are you watching TV?
I usually, for years, I was listening to podcasts. I've now just basically listened to music. But yeah, I can't watch something. It always has to be a listening thing. I get
it
too
depends.
distracted.
Sometimes I'll start watching something and then I'll be like, wait, no, I actually want to devote my entire attention to this.
Exactly.
So you can't. And then there's some things that's surprising that I've been able to watch while working before, which is like I watched like the first 2 seasons of Succession, I think, with
that's a show, by the way, that I can't I tried a couple episodes and I can't do it for some reason, but I need to give it
you got to get out of the hospital. That's the one thing.
I think that's where I got stuck.
You got to get out of the hospital and then it gets good. But anyway, I digress. But this obviously can take hours and hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now
I'll show you my next step if you want to see like the process.
Yeah, I would love to.
So after, let's assume everything is cleaned up, I basically will create a new layer, and this is how I dodge and burn. I know there are several ways of dodging and burning, but
did you just build like a blank fill layer, or what was that? Is that a
that's just a blank layer, and then I would fill it with I don't know how to do this manually anymore. I have like a key command. But you fill it basically with a 50% gray. I have an action. So basically this is just a layer right here filled with 50% gray.
Okay. And then you have it set to soft light.
And I have it set to soft light, correct.
Okay, cool.
And then I get my paintbrush and make sure that it's on black and white.
Okay.
And my opacity is at 100%. And my flow is always at 1%.
Okay. Not 0, but 1%.
1%, yeah.
Why is that 1? Just so that it has a little bit of some change to it?
It's very minor. And I make sure that my brush settings are, I think the default's 25%. If you're at like 1% spacing, it gets too heavy-handed.
Yeah.
But 25% is, I think, the default. So basically I'm at the softest setting. And if you guys don't know, X on your I guess on a Mac, I don't know if it's on a PC, but on a Mac, will switch your brushes. So from black to white. If you're seeing
All right. I feel like that's a pretty good.
What? I didn't know that was there.
It's one of the ones that I accidentally did for years until I finally figured out what was going on. Like I would do Control X or something, but not hit Control fast enough. And then be like, why is my colors keep changing? But finally, once I got that figured out, it worked.
Yeah. So basically, and then this is another process that can take hours. White light and stuff. So I basically just on a tablet, it's really nice. I don't know if you can see this slowly disappearing over here.
Mm-hmm.
I can toggle for you, but it just shows like that little bit is disappearing because I'm
tiniest bit.
Yeah, dodging. And so basically the idea is sit with the podcast, sit with some music, and dodge and burn all these specks to flatten out the skin, make it look smoother. Sorry, I did that backwards. When I was in the retouching studio that I was working in for several years, they said so many people think that retouching is comping things together and doing all these crazy tricks, but 95% of retouching is dodging and burning. That's what we spend 95% of our time doing. And it's kind of awful for some people, but it can be therapeutic if you learn how to enjoy it. And also really satisfying when you see, toggling the before and after, that I'm just getting rid of a lot of these ridges in my lips here.
Wow. See, the thing is, I would have to constantly have that flipped because otherwise I wouldn't be able to see.
Well, see, if you do that 1% too flow, it is so subtle that you can, you're not really making too many mistakes.
Right.
I'm a little heavy-handed, so when I'm done with all of this, I typically take this opacity down to 75%, just to kind of pull myself slightly back and edit myself a little bit.
Right.
And
that's after the mat, because otherwise, if you do it, then you'd have to pull back and pull back and pull back, and then
exactly. Yes. So I do the whole thing and then pull back, and so. At the end
and
of
we're
the day,
just about out of time, by the way. So if there's anything else you want to
do
to wrap things up with it, let us know.
So this would be the end of my process, and then basically I would do a lot of curves or saturation things to fix. This portion of the lip was too saturated. I desaturated that portion, or
masking it to only apply to some areas.
Yeah, and I do what I call local adjustments. And I wanted to add some more lift and volume to this area, so I brightened that area. This was too blue, I added some yellow, etc. And then this is one of our questions earlier, was like an overall feeling. I add overall contrast to make the whole thing feel kind of as one piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's about it though.
That's great. I mean, I also kind of what I was talking about earlier too, with the idea that having something that just applies to everything, so that everything kind of can feel cohesive into one piece. But yeah, well, thank you so much for walking us through your past, your future, what inspires you. It's been really great talking to you. Is there anything that you currently want to promote or you have coming up that you want us to keep an eye out for? I have just your Instagram here as Rikky Fernandes, but is there anything else?
No, just Rikky Fernandes on Instagram. If anyone ever has a specific question, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm always happy to share my insight, or if you guys have a specific question about how do I get a client or anything, I always feel like passing on information and knowledge as much as possible. I think that's very important. So reach out. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, guys, that is the end of Offset for today. We'll be back tomorrow with 2 more guests. Make sure you check out the rest of Adobe Live stuff going on today. It was a pleasure having everyone here today. Thank you to Oliver and Jack and Mike, Annika, Wade. I have to a bunch of other people, but I have to cut off because we're going to actually be cut soon. But thank you for being here. I'll see you all tomorrow at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern. And thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to y'all real soon. I did this last time. There it is.